Hi, my name is Kmetty, and I'm very proud to introduce our work, which is a joint work with Karen Bozsonyi. And the title of the presentation is Identifying Depression-Related Behavior on Facebook, an Experimental Study. And start with the research problem. The depression is one of the major mental health issues in the world. Based on Eurostat data, 7% of the European people experience current depression symptoms, which is a quite high ratio. And untreated depression causes more health issues than treated one. So the early detection of depression is crucial for intervention, as it can reduce the long-lasting effect of this mental problem. And as people live more and more digital traces in the online world, it becomes possible to detect depression-related behavior based on their online activities. But it's really challenging to find the links between the social media presence and offline behavior. But the parallel with this increased access to digital footprint data, more and more studies analyze how depression and mental health problems could be monitored through online traces. And three main digital sources traces were studied: search engines, forums, and social media. And we will focus on the latter one in this presentation. One part of the studies analyzed the content of social media posts and pictures, but without that they have any information about the users who post this content. So they just focus on the content part. The other part of the studies tried to classify the depressed and healthy people based on their social media activity. In most cases in these studies, social media activity is linked with surveys. The major platforms which used in these studies are Twitter, also Instagram, Weibo, the Chinese social media platform, and also Facebook. But in the recent years, Facebook was not used in many research related to this topic, and mostly because the really problematic data access in the case of Facebook. These studies focus on the topic used linguistic features of the posts and tweets to classify the people. And these studies mostly based on English or Chinese languages and use small and specific user groups. So the generalizability of these studies is quite questionable, because language usage is strongly cultural dependent and the basic linguistic features of languages are strongly different. So if you want to create a classification method that could be used in a cross-country context, not just in English language countries, in English language countries, we have to use the non-textual elements of online behavior. So, so our objective of the study and of the whole research we have done, just to try to identify possible non-textual elements of depression-related behavior in social media environment, and we use a novel Facebook study, data for this study. We focus on the relationship between depression and the volume and composition of Facebook friendship networks, and the volume and temporal variability of Facebook activities. And we also try to establish a link between depression and interest categories of the participants. Our data source, we use a joint data source of combined Facebook and survey data. 150 participants were in the study. It's a non-probability quota sample. The fieldwork was between 2019 April and September. It is in Hungary. We follow the data donation strategy. So respondents download their own Facebook archives and shared it with the researchers, with us. And so we have access to the posts, comments, likes, reactions, also like pages, friends list, profiles, and also as data. This is fully consented, and the data is fully anonymized. And we also have a survey, the same respondents. We ask questions about politics, media usage, self-representation, spare time activities, and music preferences, and also mental health issues. We use the latter one in this study, a modified version of the patient health questionnaire, page Q9. And we extracted two indicators from this tool with confirmative factor analysis, a cognitive affective depression scale and the somatic depression scale. These are the scales which usually extracted based on this page Q9 tool. Unfortunately, we had to omit two indicators, two questions from the somatic depression because of their poor fit. But at the end, our model had a quite high fit statistic. From the Facebook data, we used three areas, three data archives: the friendship network data, the level of Facebook activities, and also the interest categorization of the participants by Facebook. I will come back to this at the end of my presentation. So we start with the friendship network result. So here you can see some quite basic linear regression result. We fit separate models for cognitive depression and somatic depression. These are the dependent variables. And we tested the different friendship network variables. In the case of cognitive depression, the number of actual Facebook friends was significant with a negative beta coefficient, so less friend, higher cognitive depression, and also the gender homophilia was significant, which is a quite interesting result. So those who have higher gender homophilia, they have higher cognitive depression level. And we tested the interaction effect of these interest variables with age and gender. And in the case of gender homophilia, we found a significant interaction with age. You can see in the right-hand side the figure based on the marginal models. And it presents that the effect of the gender homophilia was quite strong for the younger ones, but we didn't found any effect in the case of older respondents, and the older is more than 30, older than 30 years. In the case of somatic depression, we found only the rejected number of friend requests significant with a positive beta coefficient. Activity data, we measure different activities, post on other timelines, post on own timeline, reaction on pages, reaction on friends. And we measured the volume of these activities and also the variability of these activities, the temporal variability of these activities. So we calculated indicators which measured the change between the activity level of 2018 and 19. But at the end, in the case of somatic depression, we only found one significant effect, which is a post on others timeline with a negative beta coefficient. So less post means higher somatic depression. And we also try to establish link between the temporal activity, the temporal dynamic of the activities and depression, and we found that those who had more evening posts, they had a higher rate of cognitive affective depression. And as you can see in the right hand side, based on the interaction terms, this effect was only valid for the young under 30 age cohort. The third one is the ads interest. Maybe that's the most interesting one because it's not used in previous studies as far as we know. Every user is categorized by Facebook for advertising purposes. This categorization is available in the data archive, so you can also or you can check this and download and access this data. There is no clear definition on how this work. We can only observe the result of the categorizations. It's a completely black box. And Facebook links every user with several categories. The average category number is per user is above 100. And there are some general categories, like for example vegetable, and more specific categories like for example tomato. And in this study we use the general categories, and in the sample we found nearly 700 general categories, and then we manually coded these items into 33 high-level categories. And also subcategories. And first we run a linear regression model with the number of interest categories, and it was significant in both cognitive, affective, and somatic depression, with both cognitive, affective, and somatic depression. With a negative coefficient, so those who were in less interest categories, they had higher depression level. And we also tried to find the link between the subcategories and depression level, and it was a much harder task. We run random forest analysis at the end. 2/3 of the participants were moved to the train set, the rest to the control set. We maximized in 5 how many interest variables could enter in the model. We grew 1,000 trees per sample, and then we ranked all the variables based on their influence value in the model. And we repeated this process starting from the sample 1,000 times to get a robust result. And here you can see the final result of this analysis. And we found 3 interest categories which were significant. The dogs, cats interest category, it was significant in both cases, both depression variable with a positive beta coefficient. The beer wine interest category, it correlated with the cognitive affective depression with a negative beta coefficient. Maybe it's somehow related to going out with friends. And there is an interesting category, it's US sports, American sports, for example, baseball or American football. And this interest category correlated with somatic depression with a positive beta coefficient. And it's really hard to interpret these results. Maybe it's somehow connected that these sports are broadcasted in really late hours in Hungary. So maybe that could be a reason, but it's a very weak hypothesis of us for this possible relationship. So the summary here, that earlier studies found that depressed people have smaller online social network. We found the same pattern for cognitive affective depression. We also found that they posted less in others' timeline, but we didn't find that they posted more in their own timeline. Other studies found that depressed people posted more in the daytime. We found that they posted more in the evening, at least the younger ones. And the Facebook interest category seemed useful to measure user behavior. Of course, the sample size is limited, and it was not a probabilistic sample of the Hungarian population. So we have to be cautious when we interpret results, but our study confirms some of the previous results, and we didn't find any really strongly conflicting ones. Thank you for your attention. Here you can see our email addresses and also a link to the whole research where you can find more about this Facebook study we conducted in Hungary. Thank you very much.